Our whole point starting the game, starting right from the beginning of designing the game, was to try and immerse the player.
We wanted someone who you could feel would get scared, even though they have to wear gear because they're going out in space and cutting up big rocks and all that kind of stuff. When you look at his gear, it's not designed to get shot at. It's designed to help him lift things. It's like a forklift that he wears. Isaac Clarke is the main protagonist of Dead Space.
Right from the start, Isaac was an engineer. Isaac was an everyday guy.
We wanted to make sure that people didn't think he was a space marine or a superhero. It was very important that he feel very relatable, because to us that's a great way to manage tension with the player, because you don't feel like you're capable at all times. You don't feel like you're overmatched against the enemies. You feel like you are very, very vulnerable, and the things you're doing are even more brutal because you're just a normal guy doing them.
He works at the main company headquarters, and they lose communication with one of their planet cracking ships, so they send him out, he thinks, just, you know, fix up some ship systems and get him up again.
Isaac volunteers to go on the mission because he has received a somewhat cryptic message from his ex-girlfriend, Nicole.
He hasn't heard from her in a while, and the last transmission he did get from her is a bit odd. It's strange. It's not her.
It's all falling apart here. I can't believe what's happening.
Isaac is rapidly thrust into a situation that is out of control.
One of the really fun things about developing this whole world and stuff was going really deep on the backstories of these characters.
We knew that a lot of it would never be seen by the player, but as we're developing the game, it's still important for us to have that universe there.
It informs our choices, and it helps us when he is doing stuff in these situations to go like, oh, this is what Isaac would do because he's this kind of guy.
Isaac's suit is a standard issue engineering suit when you start the game.
But pretty quickly he realizes that he's going to have a whole different job on this ship, meaning just trying to survive. So he has to scavenge tools and turn them into weapons, and he gets suits from the engineers on ship that are a little bit sturdier, that are designed for picking up heavy rocks and cutting them apart and existing in these very hostile situations.
The No HUD approach was our way of creating the most immersive experience possible. We wanted to have nothing between the player and what was happening on screen.
One of the hardest things to pull off was our idea of having no heads-up display.
You know, if I've got a HUD all over the screen, I've got my, you know, health bars and things like that, and I come into a scary situation, you know, it doesn't feel as scary. It doesn't feel like, I feel like I'm in a video game.
And we thought that that was going to be difficult. We just didn't know how difficult, because there's a lot of information to convey to people.
All the information that you need is communicated when you need it. So having his health bar down his back, or having his stasis meter on his shoulder, or having the ammo counter pop up when you raise your weapon as a projection, these are all things that allow us to make sure there's a very immersive experience. There's nothing between you and what's happening on screen.
When you do get lost in our game, instead of just an arrow, Isaac does a little move and he projects a line onto the ground that is a plausible navigation system in the world.
We wanted you to feel like there was a fictional basis for us having no HUD. It wasn't just to have no HUD for no HUD's sake.
One of the things that happens along the way is that Isaac picks up these special abilities.
You get stasis fairly quickly in the game.
And it lets him slow down things for a moment.
You know, this is something a miner would use when they're working on a delicate piece of fast-moving machinery. They'd want to slow it down so they can be very precise.
But Isaac adapts it so that he can use it against enemies.
You also have TK.
A kinesis gun, we're calling it, which allows him to lift heavy things.
He can grab his pickups, he can grab, you know, the arms of the characters and you know, use them as weapons.
And then Isaac also has zero-gravity boots, which allow him to make a zero-G jump.
Which come in pretty handy in areas of the ship that either were meant to be zero gravity or areas that aren't meant to be zero gravity. They get blown out, or he's on the outside of the ship, and that's how he survives and keeps from floating away.
The original idea was, let's just have a couple of mechanics and go really deep with them.
All of the special abilities that Isaac gets along the way really play into not just the sort of puzzle solving and the fiction, but the combat as well.
If you're smart about using all your mechanics, you can get away with killing an enemy with one bullet. The weapons in the game are basically tools.
Bullets aren't horror. Blades and saws and that kind of stuff, that's horror.
My favorite weapon would have to be the Ripper.
Which is the skill saw.
There is just something about mowing down enemies with a spinning saw blade that just gets me every time.
Dismemberment is at the heart of the game and is one of the first ideas that we came up with.
It means that you're getting a very visceral effect. Limbs are being ripped off, body parts are flying, gouts of blood are pouring against the walls as these creatures are being torn apart. It all reinforces strategic dismemberment.
And in the instance of the plasma cutter, the way it's oriented is really important. So you use the alt fire to change it from vertical like this to horizontal like that. And in the course of one enemy, as you're sort of adapting to what he does, you might, 2 vertical shots, a couple of the horizontals, and a top end. It's a completely different way of thinking and playing and using these tools than your standard pistol.
We want to be to dismemberment what Burnout was to Crashing.
It's just very visceral, it's very brutal, and it makes what you're doing feel very grounded and in some ways a little disturbing. You're a normal guy doing some really, really unspeakable things, but at the end of the day, I'd say the necromorphs had it coming, so it's a lot of fun.